Now, 6 Just Stop Oil protesters, including the group's co-founder, Roger Hallam, have had their jail sentences reduced at the Courts of Appeal. Mr. Hallam was jailed for his part in a protest that saw the M25 grind to a standstill back in November 2022. He was originally jailed for 5 years, but has had his sentence reduced to 4.
The sentences imposed in the M25 conspiracy case were quashed, and the following sentences substituted. Roger Hallam, 4 years imprisonment. Daniel Shaw, 3 years imprisonment. Lucia Whitaker de Abro, 30 months imprisonment. Louise Lancaster, 3 years imprisonment. Cressida Gethin, 30 months imprisonment.
Well, Sky's Sadia Chowdhury has the full details.
They thought that the sentences were too harsh. They have come out today and they've done a statement saying that they plan to continue their disruptive protests and that they pointed the light on other protesters who are still waiting court appearances and verdicts. Just a reminder that this was never about their convictions. This was about the sentences that were handed out. So 16 protesters, as you say, who were involved in the M25 disruption, a disruption at an oil terminal in Essex, and the throwing of the tomato soup over the Van Gogh painting in the National Gallery. They'd been jailed for up to 5 years. And they included a 78-year-old mother and also the man who is the founder of Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. And the reason why this is all important is because those kind of sentences were typically handed out to people that were involved in violent protests. And up until recently, it was considered that if you took part in a protest and it was non-violent, you'd get some credit for that, no matter what the disruption was. And once we started seeing this pattern of coordinated protests by groups like Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, the then government, the last government, came under a lot of pressure to do something about it. So they increased judges' powers to allow them to give bigger sentences, longer sentences out to these protesters. That led to a lot of international condemnation about the freedom for us to assemble, for people to assemble as protesters. And really today's decision came as a bit of a surprise to them, because I think the Just Stop Oil protesters had expected that to be turned around today. But in court they came prepared. They stood up wearing T-shirts that said corruption in court, white T-shirts. It was a silent protest, and we spoke to some of them outside. Have a listen to one of the statements that they gave us.
We now call on judges, barristers and lawyers to stop prosecuting those seeking to protect our only home. To keep putting Just Stop Oil supporters on trial, routinely denying them any legal defence, is frankly immoral. It means ignoring the realities and the horror of a heating world and billions dying in the coming decades.
So no confusion over what they want to do in the future. When we spoke to a few of the protesters afterwards, they all said that they want to continue these disruptive protests. I think we can see more of that, but it wouldn't be fair for me to finish without giving the Crown's response. I'll just read out what one of the lawyers said. They said these defendants were the pinnacle of the organisation of what was intended to be the greatest disruption in British history.